Hi, everybody. Welcome to She Asks, the podcast where we help you rewrite your narrative and change your life. My name is McBride, and I'm your host for this podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about freedom in our 40s. How do we get there? For me, the way I got there was through a book which changed my life. It came to me in my 30s, and it taught me about the power of the cycle that we go through as women. Not that men don't, it's just that we are more attuned to it given our access to intuition. The book was called The Woman's Book of Life by Joan, a psychotherapist that also studied the human development and was very coordinated with mind, body, spirit. How do they line up? So what the book taught me is that every 7 years we go through not only human development, personality development, our spirit is wanting to grow and expand. And yet, depending on what our family situation, what our life circumstances are, we are going to be experiencing perhaps some trauma, some experiences that will impact us spiritually, physically, emotionally, that we could heal from if we're given the chance to. Yet most of us will tend to carry it forward from cycle to cycle. So let's talk about this. The first cycle is our first 7 years, when we discover, who are we? Who am I? Who am I in my family, in our lives? That is just being defined. So families is how we develop our self-concept. And our self-concept is what really formulates our perspective about life. So understand that all this is happening before we're even 7 years old. It's pretty powerful if you think about it. Because what we do with our self-concept is we develop a story that explains why all of our situations are happening. For me, when I was under the age of 7, I had experienced a lot of trauma in my family. And that really developed the self-concept that made me feel like I was not lovable, that I didn't belong there, that there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't enough just the way I was. And as a result, everything I experienced after that became somewhat affected by that. Changed that. Actually, completely affected by that. So the next cycle of 7 is from 8 to 14. And by that point, most of us are in school, we're heading out into the world, so to speak, we're socializing. So this is about, how do we fit into society? What is our gender? How does our gender affect who we are? Like, am I identifying as female? Am I identifying as male? Am I identifying as non-binary? Whatever that is, or do we even know, right? Our society is trying to fit you into one or two boxes, generally speaking, female or male, right? And if you don't fit in those boxes, that also can be traumatic and confusing. And for me, in this, me figuring out who I am in the world, right? Claiming my gender, right? Claim gender, as well as claim my place in society, right? Society starts impacting. So here's what happens in human development. In this first cycle of 7, we have this subconscious, meaning it's a non-filtered part of our mind. We take in everything that's given to us by our family, and we think that's who we are. We can't reject anything. In the second cycle of 7, we have the ability to reject or accept. However, our first cycle, our first development, meaning non-filtered subconscious, is what's running the show. Those emotions, those scars are really what create how we see ourselves in the world. And if we see ourselves as something that doesn't fit, then we're completely chasing a way to fit in. And I know for myself, in this second cycle of my life, I not only didn't think I fit in, I didn't think I was enough, and I also felt like I wasn't lovable. So these messages that I picked up before I was even 7, and then were reinforced in my experiences in the world in my next 7 years, or what ended up being the internal narrative that I carried through the rest of my life. Here I am in the world thinking I'm not lovable, I'm not enough, that there's something wrong with me, that I have to find a way to fit in. Can you relate to that? And this is all before we're even 14. The next cycle of 7, between 15 and 21, is when we're becoming an adult. Oh my gosh. So what does that mean? It means that by 16 I can drive. That means by 18 I can go and fight for my government's army. It means that by 21 I can vote for a president. I can rent a car if I'm traveling. And yet, am I really mature? Am I even healed from some of these earlier messages to have the ability to act in this role? I say no, because everything that isn't healed keeps adding up. And our spirit wants us to expand into a fully whole expression of ourselves. Yet it can only expand to the degree that we are healed. So things are accumulating. Scars are adding on, if not psychically, definitely spiritually, if not physically. It all is connected, mind, body, spirit. So this is what happens when we're an adult, right? And by this age, some of us are married. I know I was 21 when I got married. Did I know who I was? No. Some of us are starting a career at this age. Do we know what your real purpose is in life? No. Often what we take on to be our career is what was given to us by our parents, by society, by what we thought at the time would help us be successful. It's a lot to decide by this age that our society deems as that we're an adult. Then there's the next cycle, 22 to 28. And in this cycle, we are becoming. What are we becoming? We're becoming women, if that's how we identify. We're becoming maybe more of whoever we are, but we are becoming. For me, by the age of 28, I became a mother. I became a wife. I became someone who was really aware that she wasn't happy in her marital circumstances, but I wasn't ready to do anything about it. Even though I was an adult, I felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't do anything. So it's interesting that we're becoming something, yet we're not always so clear what we're becoming. And my becoming was really shaped by the self-concept that was formulated before I was 7 years old. Really fascinating how that happens. The next cycle, which is 29 to 35, is when we are landing as an adult. We land into what we're becoming. So landing. So when you think about it, when you land, that means like you've pretty much settled in to what you've decided your life is going to be. For me, I was married. I was a mother of 3 before I was 35. I was already realizing that my marriage wasn't working out the way I hoped it would, so I began landing in a career. And my career was one of becoming a therapist. So I was beginning the training for that, the planning towards that, the actual education of that. I also was landing in some self-care because I was really aware everything was building within me and creating enough pain that I was ready to look at some of this stuff. So I began some mind-body type of study. And she suggested it in the book that by the time women reach this age, women are already attuned to what needs to be healed. What needs to be healed? And what needed to be healed in me was a lot of pain. And I began a process of studying these things through meditation, through yoga, through the schooling that I was doing, books I was reading. a lot of women do a lot of deep diving in this decade, in this cycle of 7. Then we get to the next decade, the next cycle, and that is that we are driven towards purpose, right? By the time most women reach 42, their children, if they had them early, are old enough to be on their own, they're in school, they're maybe in high school, my kids were, and I was ready to find a more purpose-driven life. Often we get pulled towards the things that we are really pained about. So for me, this idea of not feeling whole, not feeling loved, not feeling like I fit in, drove me towards wanting to help people because I had an eating disorder that started back here, that I wanted to help people with eating disorders heal. So by the time I was in this cycle, I was already trained and felt confident in wanting to help people with disordered eating to heal. And so I created in my life a farm, a wellness farm, which had a mind-body studio. The barn was converted for that. It had the therapy office, which was a cottage on the property. And it had the element of just nature, which is also very healing. And so a lot of great work got to be done. I got to serve a lot of great purpose, which not only helped other people, but it also began my healing. This next cycle, this 7th cycle of 7, is what Joan Borysenko refers to as the most important cycle, because this is where health becomes center, where happiness matters, where a lot of change tends to happen. And for me, the end of my marriage started around this time. The beginning of shifts in my life began around this time. My kids were going off to college. I was becoming a freer person. So freedom in our 40s is really about the shifts that go on outside of us, as well as the ones that go on within us, which are really the most important ones. I had to own the fact that I was not happy and it was affecting my health. At that stage in my life, I actually wasn't as physically fit as I am now. I wasn't as really attending to my self-care as much as I am now. I wasn't really connected to my body or my spirit. I went through this shedding, so to speak, that began because I became really aware that things had to change in order for me to be happy and in order for me to be healthy. I had to heal in order to be healthy. I had to really change circumstance in order to be happy. And often, if we don't start to heal in our 40s, which is real freedom, then we will pay the price for it in the next cycle of 7, which we could talk about the statistics alone. There are more cancer diagnoses that happen after the age of 49. There are more divorces that happen after the age of 49. There are more life-changing circumstances that happen after the age of 49 in the lives of women. And if we only looked at those statistics, that would be enough. Yet if we go back to each cycle, we could see how the accumulation of trauma, of unresolved feelings or conflict could be building up within us and creating the circumstance in which we have this breakdown, where we have this potential for breakthrough, where we have this real opportunity to become free. And sometimes freedom comes at a cost, right? Like sometimes it is as a result of a health scare that we wake up. It is as a result of losing loved ones that we wake up. It's as a result that we suffer enough that we realize in the marriage that we have to get out. All of these happen to me. And I'm sharing this with you because I want you to know that by the time you're in your 40s, please start breaking free from old patterns, from old self-concepts, from old ways of being that aren't serving you anymore, so that you can live a life that is truly free, truly the way you want it to be, full of purpose, full of happiness, full of health, because that's what you deserve. That's what Joan Borysenko was trying to teach us in that book. And I hope that you get a sense of there's a lot that you can do, that you have agency over, that you can rewrite your narrative by attending to these parts of you that were neglected, that were injured, that were traumatized. And it is possible. It's possible even at my age. And if I can do it, you can do it. So let's do this work together so that you can have the life you want, the life you deserve, the life that you were intended to, the life your spirit has always been expanding to provide you with, if only you would give yourself permission. So thank you for joining me today. I hope this is helpful, and I hope that we get to talk about it again soon. Be well.